Exeter, California, at the home of Rowena and Robert Sheldon, and ready to interview Rowena. This is Dwight Miller, and she is in the class of 1944 of Exeter High School and has spent pretty much her entire life here in Exeter. So she has a lot of stories to tell, including, could you kind of start out and say who your maiden name and your own family and where in Exeter you grew up?
My name was Rowena Thompson, and I was born actually in Bakersfield, but I only was born there, came right back to Exeter. And I have two half sisters, Mary Kay Cox, and she's a half sister, and Claudia Long, who was also my half sister. We've lived here. We've had a big family, and lots of people that settled Exeter. So,
talk about your great grandparents.
My great grandparents. Well, my great grandmother was a Snodgrass, and then she married a Jordan and had 4 children, and they pretty much lived here their whole lives too. And then on my other side of the family, we were related to the Dungans through marriage, and Blanche Dungan, and she had 3 children that lived in Exeter most of their lives.
And what was their name?
There was Vincent Dungan, who was a doctor.
Okay.
And John and Curtis.
Okay.
Those 3 from the Dungans. And then, of course, Tom Dungan was a Churchill cousin. And I kind of lose track exactly how we're related, but let's see, is there anybody?
So Blanche Dungan was your grandmother?
Was my aunt.
Your aunt. Okay.
Aunt.
Great aunt. Got it. Okay.
Yes. And let's see, they were all in farming. Smith Dungan was her husband, and then the boys, other than Vincent, became a doctor, but the rest of them were all farmers.
And she was a Snodgrass or a Jordan?
She was a Jordan.
She was a Jordan. Okay. Yes. So where did the Snodgrasses fit in?
My grandmother Snodgrass married a Jordan.
Okay, so she was the child of the Snodgrasses that came here in 1900.
Yes.
Okay.
Or below. It seems like it was 18 something, but I've lost all track of some of the dates.
So they were among the very first people to settle in Exeter and start farming, and they were right on Kauai Avenue, where the current high school and the women's club and that whole where the baseball field used to be. That was all Snodgrass property.
Yeah.
And okay, and so their daughter is the one, Blanche, that married Dungan.
Yeah.
Okay. So was there any family stories about why they sold that property to the high school?
No, I'm pretty sure it was a big offer at the time.
Yeah.
Since they wanted to put a school there. And it's pretty much the same as it used to be, except in the 40s is when they built a corridor, you know.
I noticed that, yeah,
And we used to have a 2-story building.
Did you ever go to that original 2-story?
Oh, yeah.
That was your freshman year, they still had that?
Yes.
Um,
Miss Partridge, the history teacher,
she was
there,
she was quite a teacher.
right, she was a great teacher. So, yeah,
Well, so what was that like, that two-story building?
it was nice. We had to go upstairs, which most of us wouldn't have them at home, so that was a unique. And it was just quaint.
It's a big building.
It was a really big building.
So did they tear it down while you were still in high school?
No, no.
That was after.
Yeah, it was, seems like it was in, I can't remember. Maybe it was while we were there. I don't remember the tearing down part. But I was still in school after they had the corridor situation.
So you didn't get moved into the new buildings?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Well, because you know, the reason they did all that was in 1933, they had the Long Beach earthquake.
Yes, and I was in the Long Beach earthquake.
You were in Long Beach?
We were down there.
You were a little kid.
Yeah, I was 5 years old. I remember I had white boots and we dredged the flood part. And we were down there visiting my grandmother, Jordan. She was down there for the summer or whenever it was. And for vacation. So we went to see her. And the thing that stuck out in my mind were the big buildings, and the whole half came off, and you could see the bathrooms and bedrooms and so forth.
Oh my gosh.
And as a little girl, that was really startling.
As an adult, it would be startling too.
Yeah. And at the time that the earthquake happened, I was playing jacks in the kitchen. And when it started, my jacks slid to one side of the room and the other.
Oh my gosh.
And then the cupboards opened and the dishes came out.
Oh my
And for
gosh.
me, at 5 or 6, maybe I was, anyway, it was startling.
That's very startling.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. But it didn't ruin the house you were in.
No. We were just visiting. I think we were in a hotel or something.
Okay.
So,
Well, that changed the rules for all the schools in California,
yes.
because they passed a law after that, and they said if any kid in California ever got hurt in an earthquake,
Yeah.
the board members would be personally liable. They would sue them personally. They wouldn't sue the school district. They'd sue the board members personally. And so every board member in California, we got to get these fixed. And that original building didn't pass,
No.
but the auditorium did.
And it's still standing.
Still standing. So it's amazing they were able to get that to pass earthquake standards.
And that's I was telling you that the big trees in front of the auditorium were planted in 1927, and it was my uncle's class. He told me about that. Every time I pass by them, that's a memory.
That's a memory. So you know when those were planted.
Yeah.
Well, they're big trees.
Yeah.
That's, coming up on 100, a little short of 100 years. That's amazing. So your uncle, which uncle was in the class of 27?
Yeah.
Which one?
Benjamin.
Thompson? No, Jordan. Okay.
Yes.
That would be.
My mother was a Jordan.
Okay. Got it.
She had a sister and another brother. There were 4 children.
Okay. Okay. So your mom was a Jordan, and then she marries a Thompson.
Well, yes, and then that didn't last too long.
Okay.
They were way too young, and so she married a Slav.
Okay. And that's how you got your half sisters.
Yes.
Okay. So how old were you when mom got remarried?
I was about 8, I think, when she remarried.
Okay.
So I was a little time with my father.
Okay. So your stepdad is, for all intents and purposes,
Right.
was your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did he do in Exeter?
Oh, he was so young. It was very young wedding, and I think it was during the time that, of course, I think he was 18 or 19. It was hard to get a job at that age. And so that was why I was born in Bakersfield. We were down there just temporarily. He had a driving a truck for the
So your mom was in her 20s and he was only 18? Okay. Was there any,
That's probably a story I shouldn't be telling.
well, it's, you know,
And today it happens a lot.
yeah. Well, okay, so then when he came back and ended up settling in Exeter, what was his job?
I think he was just.
Stayed truck driver or, okay, cool. So how did you and Maureen Griggs become friends?
Oh, in school, we just hit it off.
Couple of Lincoln School kids?
Oh, yeah, we were just inseparable. I used to go up to Midlothian to their cabin. And then I rode their horse and anyway, and then we took dancing lessons together, which was real popular back then.
Huh.
For young kids.
There was a dance like lesson place in Exeter?
No, we went to Visalia. I was trying to think of the lady's name.
Went to the
dancing lesson.
Went to the big city.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, if she grew up on Filbert or F Street and you were, where did you grow up? Where was your house?
Well, B Street was where my mother lived, and my grandmother lived in Korea. And of course, I had these two little sisters, and so when I started high school, I kind of stayed at my grandmother's. They were only 2 or 3 blocks apart. So
Okay.
I kind of lived at both places.
Well, I can see, didn't they? But you went to Lincoln, wouldn't Maureen have gone to Wilson?
No.
Because,
she went to Lincoln.
but it seems like she was on that side of town, on the Wilson side.
Well, actually, she's barely on Filbert, this side of the track.
Oh, okay.
And we used.
Oh, the tracks are the divider.
Yes.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. Well, that's cool.
Yes.
So all the way from kindergarten, all the way through 12th grade, seniors, you guys were buds, friends.
Yes. And then, of course, she was gone most after she married. She married a pilot.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
flying.
They were gone. They lived in all over the world, different places.
Yeah.
And then when she came back, we got together again and with Lori, and I still save pictures that I come across and take them to Lori.
Well, you're kind of like Aunt Rowena to Lori.
Yeah.
She kind of thinks of you that way, I think. So that's pretty cool. You guys are like sisters. So talk about the other aspects of growing up in Exeter. That who are the people like you, the Jordans and the Snodgrasses, who are the older generation? What do you remember about the older people in town?
Everybody had big families because it was before kids left and went to college or whatever. I know myself in that era, the last of my graduating class, some of the boys had already turned 18 and had joined the service. And we didn't have a prom that year. We had a dinner, which was supposed to be the same, but some of the guys were gone to the service already. And the thing I remember, we had gas rationing, coffee, cigarettes, sugar, quite a bit. So when I went away to college, my uncle was in the farming business, so he gave me some gas stickers or whatever they were.
Right.
So that I'd have gas to go to Santa Barbara and back.
So you went to UC Santa Barbara?
Yes.
Okay.
And Anyway, everything was so different. Now, I wasn't in school at the time that the people came and picked up all the Japanese.
You were not.
No, I think that happened in 41 or
Actually 42.
42.
Yeah.
So I wasn't present when that happened, but I do remember the kids saying how it was for them to see their Japanese friends taken off to
They
wherever they,
were they picked up at school?
yes,
Really?
took, yes. And we had Sugio Hariyama, and can you think of some of the other Japanese guys?
Well, there was Sugio was in the class, and is it?
His last name was Hirayama.
Yeah. Well, Fibber was the younger brother.
Yes.
He was in middle school.
Tom Watanabe.
Okay.
And seems like one of the Japanese boys was the student body president. And they were all good athletes.
Oh yeah.
And I guess the reason we had so many Japanese, not a lot, because we didn't even have a big school. But in Lindsay, there was a lot of Japanese people in gardens. And I think some of them lived out by Tuleville.
Okay.
Which they could come to Exeter, which we had Kenny Gwynn that lived in Tuleville.
A little later.
Became a governor.
Yeah.
So. Anyway.
So you weren't at school the day they came to pick them up? Okay. But you heard about it.
I don't know who would be, some of the students in 42, I think.
Yeah.
42.
It was in the spring of 42, so it had been the class after Robert.
Right.
But you would have been a sophomore that year,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you would have been a sophomore. So it was your sophomore year. Okay.
But the 40s were just not normal. I look back and I think when we went into the 50s, the boys were home, patriotic, you could buy a refrigerator again, appliances that we hadn't been able to get, and the rationing was lifted. And, but we just had an unusual 4 years there.
Yeah.
As the world,
Yes.
war.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. Do you remember during high school was it pretty common to follow the war news? What was going on in the war?
No.
Not so much.
Well, we didn't have TV.
Well,
So we get, today we get what happened yesterday.
well, what got happened 5
Yeah.
minutes ago? But did they have newsreels at the theaters in town?
Yeah, they do.
And so if you wanted to, you could
Yeah.
go and see to and you had 2 theaters, right?
Yes, and I was cashier at one.
You were, which one?
The Pete's, is Charlie Pete's, own little regular one,
Was that the one on the north side of Pine Street or the south side?
north side.
Okay.
And I worked after school there. And that was, then we had newsreels and so forth, but I don't think at that time a lot of us kids were tuned in to it other than thinking about our boyfriends.
Right,
that
right.
were overseas.
Yeah, you were acting like 16-year-olds. So I heard you could get the price of a movie and a soda and popcorn for 21 cents. Yes.
Yeah, you mean each, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. For 21 cents, you could get a ticket in.
I think it was 25 for general admission,
Okay.
so,
Pretty good deal,
yes,
but it probably felt expensive.
yeah,
Uh,
oh, yeah.
And so you were the cashier taking tickets or selling
I
popcorn?
was selling tickets and doing my homework at the same time.
Okay, okay.
But Charlie Pease was a good boss, so he,
Well,
of course, when his daughter was in high school with me.
oh, okay. She was also in your class?
Yeah,
Okay.
but she didn't work down at the theater.
Why not?
I don't know.
Huh? Because her friend Rowena she didn't want to take your job.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. Well, So by the time you were growing up, the Snodgrasses that owned that property where the high school,
Yeah.
had they already passed away? Or were they still around?
I think they were still living because my grandfather was blind. And he had a white cane, and they would let me, I was 5 or 6, I can't remember. They would let me take him for a walk down to the corner and back,
Okay.
because he was totally blind.
That was your grandfather or great grandfather?
Great grandfather.
Okay, so that was grandfather Snodgrass.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was still around. So did he tell you stories of the old days?
No, I probably was too young.
Too young to
get
appreciate it. Yeah, yeah.
I was mostly concerned with the fact he was blind. I didn't understand why.
Right.
And, but I felt needed to take him for a walk.
And you did. Yes, ma'am. All right. Well, tell me some more stories about early Exeter.
Early Exeter, oh dear. Well, there was the redwood, they asked at the hometown for the
Luncheon.
what do we go to?
Yeah, that old timers luncheon.
Yeah, they asked for the kids hung out. Well, there was the Redwood Cafe down where Kirkland's Pizza Place is now.
Okay.
And in the back, they had a jukebox, and the high school kids kind of hung out there and would meet up with their boyfriends and have a Coke and dance, which was really neat. That was neat. Nobody, I don't know, nobody was objecting to that.
That was the Redwood Cafe.
Yeah, and that was the hangout. So,
Do you remember where the Legion Hall was?
who?
The Legion Hall, the American Legion Hall.
I was trying to think. I think I told you with the Oddfellows,
Yeah, was upstairs at Mixter's.
I thought. But since then, I've been thinking that whole block south of Mixter's was a grocery store and a Western Auto. And it was above there that I know the Oddfellows were, because I think it was through Al Briggs was either a member, because Maureen and I went up there and danced.
Okay.
At one time.
Okay.
And so the American Legion Hall, I don't know. I really,
But the Oddfellows was next to the
it was above the grocery store.
Okay.
Dunkin'.
And that was next door to the hardware store.
Western Auto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm trying to figure out where some of these buildings were that I read about in the old accounts,
Yeah.
old newspapers, and they talk about they had a meeting at the Oddfellows Hall or the Legion Hall.
And now not the Masons.
And I know where that is, and I know where the Mixter's Hall is, but the Legion and Oddfellows.
Masons were across the street.
Right.
But, you know,
Right.
and I was a rainbow girl.
You
That was
were.
a big thing.
I'll bet.
And that was what we kids did for social stuff, not like they do now, of course.
Did they have any sports for girls?
Yeah, I played baseball and basketball. I love basketball.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, they did.
But not swimming.
Not swimming.
Where did kids go swimming?
I don't know, but Lindsay Heights.
Lindsay Heights. How'd you get out there?
Heavens, I don't know. There was, I can't remember her name, but she always had her family car and she could drive, and we would go out there.
Well, Tommy Duncan said the Dobsons that used to drive kids out there.
Yeah.
They didn't do that for you though?
No.
Because they showed up in Exeter around 1923, so they'd been around a while by the time
Oh, yeah.
you were growing up. But they used to take kids out to Lindsay Heights for swimming.
Yeah, we did.
And
And
but it was cold.
yeah, and my first husband was a lifeguard out there in Ross Cellars. And Ross was kind of mean.
Ah,
A friendly mean is what I'm talking about.
so Jack was, your husband was a year ahead of you?
42.
He was 2 years, okay. And so were you guys, was he your boyfriend in high school?
No, this was a strange thing. He was my boyfriend in high school. And
So,
remember
so you were
that.
dating a senior when you were only a freshman?
yeah,
Oh my, okay.
so I was, they had a Sadie Hawkins dance. And I went up to Jack and I asked him if he would ask Walt Moore to go with me to the
Okay.
dance. Didn't know Jack from Adam, other than I knew he was Walt's best friend.
Okay.
So I said, "You think Walt would go to this Sadie Hawkins dance?" And he said, "Oh, I'm sure he would." So I went with Walt. I'm probably saying things out of tune, but all the girls said, "Walt Moore?" Just like, you better watch out.
Uh-oh, okay.
And that was so funny because we had a great time. He took me home, took me to the door, didn't even kiss me goodnight. Thanks for asking me. So those girls were all wrong.
They had it wrong, but, so where did Jack, where'd you end up, how'd you end up with Jack?
Jack came in. I was working at the jewelry store after school. And he came in and he wanted his dog tags put back together. And he was with Frankie Amendola.
This is after the war?
And Frankie said, "I hear you just got a Dear John letter from Robert," because he was overseas winning the war. And,
Yeah.
and so Frankie said, "Why don't you," and Jack was standing there. He was kind of timid, so he didn't say anything. And Frankie did all the talking, and he says, "How about you and Jack coming with Margaret and I to the dance in Visalia?" Now that was another thing. They had a dance, and because we had the Sequoia field with all the cadets, they would come to the dance. So there was always a lot of military there. So Jack and I, he was home on leave.
Okay.
He was in uniform when he came in. And so he came and we went to the dance, and the next day he was on a 15-day leave, I guess, because they'd gone so many missions. And so we went to picnic up in Three Rivers the next day, went to the movies the next day, and all of a sudden it was
You were serious?
connection, yes. And I still back to the day I asked him if his best friend got it. But
So that was the start.
that's the story. That's how Jack and I got together. And then I went away to Santa Barbara to school, and he wrote to me every day from England or wherever he was, and he would send special delivery. And Zeke Sykes was the mailman.
Uh-huh.
And so he had to come to the school to give me these letters from him because it was special delivery.
Oh, okay.
And so he was writing me every day, and Jack was writing, and so forth and so on. And so I was in the house where I lived with another couple of girls going to school. And one day the lady that ran the house, she came in, she said, "Rowena, there's a man out here in a uniform, and he's been sitting on the porch since about 6 o'clock." And so my first thought, it was Robert. I thought, "Oh, Robert's sorry for what he did." And apparently he doesn't have that girlfriend anymore. And it was Jack. And Jack said, "I want to marry you," and blah, blah, blah. So Anyway,
Boom.
I quit school because I was already so smart.
Yeah.
I tell my grandkids that. I said, I only went to college a year because I became so smart, I quit and got married.
You didn't need 4 years.
And they laugh at that, of course.
So that war was still going then when you guys
Yeah,
got married?
yeah.
Okay.
In fact, the reason he was home on leave then is when Roosevelt died and Franklin was hit and he was on, there was an
Aircraft carrier.
where the planes flew off.
Right, an aircraft carrier.
Yeah. And so, he was aboard and they told the boys, get off, get on in the planes and get off as quickly as possible. They had a suicide
Oh, kamikaze, yeah.
up in the air. And so, he got off, there was five planes that got off. And they had to land on another aircraft carrier with Yorktown.
Okay.
And, then, the next day, one of the guys took a boat back to the wreckage and went through the lockers of all the guys and brought one of my pictures in there, one that they saved. And, anyway, that was all very exciting.
Yeah, big stuff going on back then.
Yeah.
So,
And then when he got out of the service, his family were living in Fresno. And he went to my mother's house and he said, it's Rowena here. And she said, she's on her honeymoon. So that was,
just miss.
yeah. So,
So when did you guys get back together?
his wife, of course, Jack passed away in '88. His wife passed away in 2011, was it?
Yeah.
And after that, this time I was the pursuer. So anyway, I called him and after that, and he said, well, next time you're down in San Diego, because Vicki lived there. So I went down frequently. And he said, come by. And I said, okay, can I come by this weekend? And he came home with me.
Okay.
And we've been together 10 years.
All right.
And that's why we're both still surviving.
Picked up where you left off in 1944.
Yes, we did.
That's a pretty good story.
It is. And we help each other.
Yeah.
He's gonna be 98 next week,
Oh my goodness.
and I won't be 97 until January.
Well, you guys are both doing pretty well.
Yeah.
Oh, well, gosh. Well, I am, I could probably go on forever, because I'm sure you are full of story about that story about when they put the swimming pool in. What, you remember that in 1948, 49, you had been married for a couple of years
Yeah, I can't remember.
and the city put that pool in. It was a big deal.
I'll tell you, yes, it was in 1947 because I was pregnant with Vicki.
Okay.
And the girl that came to dedicate, she was Vicki Graves. She was there as a professional swimmer, really, to dedicate the pool. And I hadn't named the baby yet, and I thought, well, I like the name Vicki.
Well, there you
That's-
go.
That's how come on.
So you were at that celebration ceremony when
Yeah.
they opened the
Yeah,
swimming pool.
when they opened it.
Okay.
And it had to be 47.
So she would have been like an Olympic swimmer,
Yeah, she was. She
visiting.
was from someplace else, I don't know where.
Okay.
They celebrated her because she was outstanding.
Okay. And you like the name. But you used to have to walk by a big two-story house that was on the
Yeah,
corner
in the
to,
yard, and they had peacocks in the yard. all the kids talk about peacocks.
Not afraid of those peacocks running out in the street and getting hit? Those peacocks, it was on a busy road, right? It was busy.
They had a fence.
Okay.
Yeah. They had a fence, but I remember looking at that big house, because at that time, never seen that big a house, and I walked by it every day going to Lincoln.
Okay. And then again, going to high school.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Did you, after you had the baby, did you go back swimming and use that pool?
no, I didn't, but I took the kids.
You took your kids, okay.
Yeah.
And then a couple years
yeah,
later,
all the kids were swimmers,
Yeah.
all 4 of them.
yeah.
And,
Well, I swam with Jeff.
did you?
I did.
I couldn't remember.
He was a senior when I was a freshman, but I was on the swim team with him, and he was a backstroker.
Yeah.
That was his best event.
Yeah, was really good.
He was really good. He was our best guy.
They took him to Fresno to a swim meet when he was 10, just for the backstroke. And he did really well, and I can't think of who the coach was at that time.
Was it still Mulligan? Mr. Mulligan?
No, well, maybe it was. Mulligan was our neighbor. They lived across the street from us.
He was kind of the swim
Yeah.
guy
he was
for the
swim
city.
coach.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe that was him.
Because I think he started in the 50s and he was still coaching in the 60s when Jeff would have come along.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be right.
Okay.
And then Joe went on a scholarship to water polo. And
Didn't he go? Did he go to USC?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I was just reading some politics the other day about coaches and favoring people because of so and so. And when Joe got down there, he was just one of the top swimmers for water polo. And then one day the coach came over and he said, you know, Joe, I'm from Riverside, no, Newport. I'm from Newport. And he said, I've kind of promised if they sent their kids there, that they'd be on the swim team or water polo team. And so he said he thought he could redshirt for a while. So that, and Joe said ever since then he's looked back. Now he knows politics. So he said, I kind of think I was as good as any of those other guys, but they got on.
He just wasn't from the right town.
Yeah, probably.
Oh my gosh. He didn't have the right connections. Yeah, that happens.